As we keep learning about components in this section, there is one essential principle that we really need to focus on now, which is component composition. Now, in order to talk about component composition, we first need to take a look at what happens when we simply use or include a component in another component in JSX. So let's say that we have this modal component that we want to reuse, and also this success component which simply renders the message well done. And then we just use the success component inside the modal component like this. And this sort of thing is exactly what we have been doing with our components most of the time, right? So we just use them inside of other components. However, when it comes to reusability, this creates a big problem. That's because right now, the success component really is inside of modal. They are deeply linked together in the JSX right now. And therefore, we cannot reuse this modal component to display some other message inside of it. For example, an error message. But as you can imagine, in order to solve this, we now bring in the technique of component composition, where we can compose the modal and success components together. So here we have our modal component again, but with a fundamental difference. So this component does not include a predefined component, but instead it accepts children with the children prop. So just like we have learned before. So if we get our success component again, we can now basically just pass it into the modal by placing it between the opening and closing tags when we use modal. And if you need a minute to analyze this code a bit better, feel free to just pause the video right now. Because I want you to really grasp the fundamental difference here. So in the first example, the success component is really tied to the modal. And so that modal might as well be called a success modal, because we can't use it for anything else anymore. But with component composition, we simply passed the success component right into the modal and composed them together in this way. And again, this works thanks to the children prop. Now, of course, we could have passed in any other component, which makes the modal component highly reusable. So essentially, when we do component composition, we leave this hole or this empty slot in the component, ready to be filled with any other component that we want. So let's say that later we needed another modal window somewhere else in the app, but one that renders this error message. Well, that's pretty easy now. We just use the modal component again, but this time we pass in the error component as a children. And with this, we have also successfully composed these two components together as well. So formally, component composition is the technique of combining different components by using the children prop or by explicitly defining components as props. Now, we use composition for two big reasons, or in two important situations. First, when we want to create highly reusable and flexible components, such as the modal window, or really a million other reusable components that we can think of. And we do this really all the time. Now, the second situation in which we can use composition is in order to fix a prop drilling problem like the one that we found in the previous video. And this is actually great for creating layouts, as we will do in the next video. Just keep in mind, once again, that this is only possible because components do not need to know their children in advance, which allows us to leave these empty slots inside of them in the form of the children prop. And with that being said, let's return to our project.